In the very heart of Europe lives a people whose language is unlike any neighboring tongues. Surrounding them are Slavs, Germans, and Romance peoples. Yet the Hungarians speak a language related to the dialects of hunters from the distant Siberian taiga. How is this possible? In 2016, an international team of geneticists uncovered ancient burials of Hungarian conquerors from the 10th century. 76 samples from the period between 895 and 1000 AD. What the scientists found in the maternal lines of DNA forced a rewrite of history books. Almost a quarter of these warriors carried genes from the steppe nomads of Asia. Where did they come from? And why did their descendants end up in the very center of Europe? Today, we will look at 4 key points. First, we will learn what secrets the maternal DNA of the Hungarian conquerors holds and why 23% of them carried genes from the steppe nomads deep in Asia. Second, we will trace the paternal lines and discover a genetic bridge between Hungary and western Siberia, stretching thousands of kilometers. Third, we will see how 28 pairs of ancient relatives connected the southern Ural Mountains and the Carpathians across a gap of 2 to 3 centuries. Finally, we will uncover the mystery of King Bela III and the genetic marker of the Arpad dynasty. At the end, I will tell you about one marker that is found in both Hungarians and the Siberian taiga hunters, the Khants and Mansi. Its emergence coincides with the divergence of Uralic languages. A coincidence? Probably not. Stay tuned for the finale. In recent years, ancient DNA sequencing technologies have revolutionized research. Scientists can now read the genetic code of people who died over 1,000 years ago. And the Hungarians have become one of the most intriguing subjects of study. Why? They are the only people in Central Europe whose language belongs to the Uralic family. Their closest linguistic relatives, the Khants and Mansi, live in western Siberia, thousands of kilometers away. But does linguistic relationship correlate with genetic lineage? This question prompted international teams of geneticists to join forces. The results of their work turned ideas about the origins of an entire nation upside down. And perhaps among you are those whose veins carry the blood of ancient riders of the Great Steppe. It is time to delve into the molecular archives of history. Haplogroups H and U. Did you know that maternal lines are passed down from mother to children virtually unchanged for thousands of years? This is mitochondrial DNA, a kind of molecular clock that counts time back to our ancestral mothers. What did the analysis of the Hungarian conquerors reveal? 77% of maternal lines turned out to be West Eurasian. Haplogroup H was present in 22% of the warriors. Haplogroup U in 20%. These lines trace back to the Pontic-Caspian steppe from Bronze Age cultures. Potopovka, Poltavka, Srubnaya. The period between 1850 and 1200 BC. It turns out that most mothers of the Hungarian conquerors carried the blood of ancient steppe peoples long before the Hungarians themselves appeared. But where did the remaining 23% come from?
Look out! He is getting away!
Haplogroups A, C, D, F, G, and M. 23% of the maternal lines of the conquerors did not originate in Europe, but in the depths of Asia. These are genetic markers characteristic of ancient nomads from Central Asia and Siberia. Specifically, scientists identified haplogroups A11, C4, D4C1, F1b, and G2a. Where do they come from? The geographic origins lead to Kazakhstan, Altai, and the shores of Lake Baikal. The cultures of Baraba and the Minusinsk Basin. The period between 850 and 200 BC. This means that almost every fourth mother of a Hungarian warrior belonged to peoples who galloped across the endless steppes from Mongolia to the Caspian Sea. But what will the paternal lines show? Haplogroups R1a, I2a, I1, R1b, E1b, G2a, J1, and J2. Now let's look at the paternal line. The Y chromosome is passed down from father to son and preserves the memory of male ancestors over hundreds of generations. In 2019, a team led by Neporotsky analyzed 29 men from elite burials of the conquest period. The results were astounding. 69% carried West Eurasian haplogroups, R1A-CT S1211 indicated East Slavic roots. I2A1A2B-L621 pointed to the Balkans. I1-M253 and R1B-U106 were linked to Germanic tribes. And haplogroups E1B-V13, G2A, J1, and J2 traced back to the Near East and the Caucasus. The Hungarian conquerors were already a mix of peoples. But who were the other 30%? Haplogroups Q1A2-M25, R1A-Z2124, C2-M217. Now pay attention. 27% of Hungarian conquerors had paternal lines that traced back to Inner Asia and Siberia. Haplogroup Q1A2-M25 is a marker of peoples genetically related to the Xiongnu. These were nomads who shook the borders of ancient China before our era and built the first steppe empire. Haplogroup R1A-Z2124 is a Central Asian type found today in Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and among the Bashkirs. C2-M217 is a classic marker of Mongolian and Siberian peoples. These haplogroups are still present among the Buryats, Chukchi, Yakuts, and Evenks. This means that every fifth Hungarian warrior carried the genes of peoples who lived thousands of kilometers from the Carpathians. But that's not all. There remained a mysterious 10%. Haplogroup N1A1A1A2-Z1936. Here begins a true detective story. This genetic marker belonged to broadly Eurasian lines, which comprised about 10% of the paternal gene pool of the conquerors. It is this marker that connects the Hungarians with their linguistic relatives. In 2019, a team led by Post analyzed nearly 5,000 samples from 46 populations. The results were staggering. Subclade B540 reaches 60% among the Bashkirs of southern Ural. Among the Khants and Mansi, it's around 27%. And among modern Hungarians, only 1 to 4%. Among the Szekely, Hungarians from Transylvania, it's about 4%. Here's what's important. This marker is found only in the Volga-Ural region and among Hungarians. None of their neighbors in Central Europe have it. What does this mean? Subclades B540, B545, and B535. Geneticists can date the divergence of populations based on accumulated mutations. It's like molecular clocks counting thousands of years. Post's team conducted a phylogenetic analysis and obtained astounding figures. The divergence of subclades B540 and B545 from B535 occurred about 4,900 years ago. The separation between B540 and B545 took place approximately 4,200 years ago. And the expansion of both lines began between 2,700 and 2,900 years ago. Now, hold on tight. Linguists independently estimate the divergence of Uralic languages, Hungarian and Obe-Ugric, to be precisely during this period. Between 2,700 and 2,900 years ago. The genetic and linguistic data point to the same date. It cannot be a coincidence. This is evidence of the actual migration of ancient peoples. The Hunnic period. The Carpathian Basin is a crossroads of migrations. Long before the Hungarians, other waves of nomads came from the east. The first of these were the Huns. From 400 to 453 AD, the era of Attila. Neporotsky's study in 2019 analyzed 3 samples from this period. The Y chromosome showed mixed European East Asian origins. Genetic markers pointed to peoples who had dominated the steppes of Central Asia for centuries. The Huns brought the legacy of distant Asian tribes to Europe. Their empire lasted not long, but the genetic imprint remained in the local population forever. However, this was just the first wave. 100 years later, a second, even more powerful one arrived. Who were these new arrivals? Haplogroup N1A1A1A3-B197, the Avar period. From 568 to 822 AD. More than 250 years of dominance in the Carpathian Basin. Neporochky's study analyzed 13 samples from this era. And here's what's striking. 62% of paternal lines turned out to be East Eurasian. This is 3 times more than among the later Hungarian conquerors. The key haplogroup N1A1A1A3-B197 pointed to northeastern Siberia. Modern carriers of this marker live among the Koryaks and peoples of the Pacific coast. The Avars were an elite with distinct Siberian origins. They migrated west across Eurasia and created a powerful khanate. When the Hungarians arrived in the Carpathian Basin, they encountered the descendants of the Avars, and they mixed with them. But how did the Hungarians differ from their predecessors? Haplogroup N1A1A1A4-M2118. And here's the third wave, the Hungarian conquest. From 895 to 907 AD, the picture was strikingly different from that of the Avars. 69% of West Eurasian lines compared to the Avars' 38, but among the eastern markers stood out this rare Siberian type. Today it is found among the Yakuts, Evenks, and Evenks. These are hunters and reindeer herders of the taiga and tundra. The Hungarian conquerors carried the genes of peoples who had never known the open steppes. They came from the depths of Siberian forests. The Hungarians turned out to be not just nomads. In their veins mingled the blood of steppe dwellers and taiga hunters, Europeans and Asians. But from where exactly did they start their journey? The answer was given by the latest genomic studies. The Tobol-Leit-Sargatka component. From where exactly did the Hungarians come? The answer was provided by a full genomic study by Guris in 2024. The scientists applied a new method, analysis of identity by descent. They sought shared segments of DNA among people from different eras and regions. The result was sensational. About 70% of the gene pool of the Hungarian conquerors originated from the Tobol-Irtysh region in western Siberia. This same component was dominant among the population of the Karayakupovo horizon in the southern Ural between 750 and 1000 AD. It is in western Siberia that the Khants and Mansi live today, the closest linguistic relatives of the Hungarians. Thus, genetics pointed to the same ancestral home as linguistics. But can direct relatives be found between the Urals and the Carpathians? 28 pairs of relatives. A discovery that sends chills down your spine. Guris's study revealed direct kinship ties between people living in the southern Ural and the Carpathian Basin. Scientists found 28 pairs of individuals who shared more than 2 common segments of DNA, measuring over 12 centimorgans. 11 pairs showed even longer segments. The degree of relatedness ranged from the 6th to the 8th generation. This is about 150 to 200 years. The temporal gap between samples was 200 to 300 years. People from the Karayakupovo horizon in the Urals and the Hungarian conquerors of the 10th to 11th centuries in the Carpathians turned out to be blood relatives. Not just genetically similar, they are relatives. This is direct evidence of migration. But when exactly did the separation occur? Haplogroup N101A1A1A. The Seifert study of 2022 clarified the timeline. The researchers examined 3 archaeological cultures of the Volga-Ural region. The Kushnarenkovo culture, 6th to 8th centuries AD, southern Ural. The Chialik culture, 11th to 14th centuries. The very great Hungary mentioned in medieval chronicles. Between them is the Karayakupovo horizon. This maternal line told the story of divergence. Among the population of Uelgi and Karayakupovo, it was found in 26% of cases. In the Chialic culture, in 12. Among the Hungarian conquerors, between 5 and 10. The dating was striking. Kushnarenkovo and the Chialic lines diverged between the 6th and 7th centuries, and Chialic and the conquerors diverged in the 9th century. It was then that part of the people moved west. But who was their ruler? Haplogroup R-Z2125. In the Basilica of Székesfehérvár lay the remains of one of the greatest Hungarian monarchs, King Béla III, reigned from 1172 to 1196. Neperatsky's study in 2020 conducted a full genomic analysis of his remains. The results surprised many. The king's Y chromosome belonged to haplogroup R-Z2125, subclass R1A1A1B2A2A. Where is this marker found today? Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan. It appears among the Karakalpaks and Bashkirs. The Arpad dynasty, which ruled Hungary for over 400 years, carried a genetic marker of Eastern origin. Almost 300 years after the conquest and mingling with the European population, the royal blood preserved the memory of a distant Asian ancestral home. But what remains of the Eastern heritage among ordinary Hungarians today? What remains of the Eastern heritage after 1,000 years of mixing? Modern Hungarians are genetically similar to their neighbors, Austrians, Slovaks, Croats. But traces of ancient migrations can still be read in their DNA. On the maternal line, East Eurasian components comprise 3 to 5%. On the paternal line, haplogroups of type N are found in 1 to 4% of the population. In isolated regions, up to 6. Autosomal analysis shows the same result, 3 to 5% of the Eastern component. How can this be explained? Among the conquerors of the 10th century, Eastern markers reached 20 to 30%. But over 1,000 years, the Hungarians mixed with the Avars, Slavs, and Germans. The Eastern heritage has been diluted with European ancestry in a rough ratio of 1 to 20. And yet, it has been preserved. However, there is one group of Hungarians that has retained more ancient genes. The Seki. In Transylvania, in the east of historical Hungary, lives a special group of Hungarians, the Seki. For centuries, they have lived in geographical isolation in the mountain valleys of the Carpathians. After the conquest of the late 9th century, part of the Hungarians settled here, on the eastern fringes. The mountains protected them from mixing with surrounding peoples, and this isolation preserved what other Hungarians lost. The proportion of East Asian haplogroups is elevated among the Seki on the maternal line. Paternal markers of Eastern origin occur 4 times more frequently than among the Hungarians on the plains. The Seki are living witnesses to what Hungarians were 1,000 years ago, a genetic time capsule in the heart of Europe. They have preserved a higher share of the initial gene pool of the conquerors. What does all this mean? So, what have we learned about the origins of the Hungarians? Genetics confirmed what the language suggested. Hungarians are descendants of peoples from the Volga-Ural region and western Siberia. 77% of the maternal lines of the conquerors were West Eurasian, while 23% were Eastern. On the paternal line, 69% were West Eurasian and about 21% Eastern. The main component leads back to western Siberia. The timing of genetic divergence coincides with the divergence of Uralic languages. Molecular and linguistic data point to the same ancestral home. Despite 1,000 years of European history, blood from Eastern ancestors flows in the veins of every 30th Hungarian. DNA has proven to be more accurate than chronicles. And are you ready to find out what your genes hold? The story of the Hungarians raises a question that concerns everyone. What defines a people? Language? Genes? Or the memory of generations? Hungarians speak the language of Siberian hunters, but live in the heart of Europe. Their DNA holds traces of the steppes and taiga, yet their culture is European. Share your thoughts in the comments. And finally, today commercial DNA tests are accessible to everyone. Thousands of people who considered themselves native Europeans are discovering markers of nomads and Siberian peoples in their results. The history of the Hungarians reminds us of a simple truth. There are no peoples that have remained in one place forever. We are all descendants of those who once dared to venture beyond the horizon. Perhaps the story of great migrations is also written in your DNA. All that remains is to read it.